What happens when a single missile aimed at a U.S. fighter jet unleashes the full force of American air, sea, and electronic warfare assets? You'd expect one missile to mean one response, but this wasn't tit for tat. It was an architectural strike involving destroyers, SM-6 missiles, Growler electronic jammers, and Hawkeye surveillance aircraft. The Houthis thought they could score a hit. Instead, they triggered something far bigger. So here's the question. Why did the U.S. choose the SM-6 over Tomahawks? And what message did it send to anyone watching from Tehran to Damascus? Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Just how close did a Soviet-era missile come to cutting short the mission of a modern U.S. fighter jet? Closer than most viewers might expect, because the math of speed and distance turned minutes into mere seconds, and survival depended on every defensive layer working exactly as advertised. The patrol began like any other. An American F-16 flew steadied at 30,000 feet, holding a high vantage over the Red Sea corridor. Its mission was to scan and deter, show presence, keep the air lanes open, and pick up anything unusual on radar. What the pilot didn't know was that far below, near the Yemeni coastline, dotted with sand and rusting port cranes, a Houthi crew was loading an SA-6 anti-aircraft missile onto its launcher. The skies above seemed calm, but in just moments, they would erupt with a weapon designed decades ago for a very different battlefield. The SA-6 isn't just outdated hardware parked in a museum. This missile, built during the Cold War, was engineered to shoot down fast-moving jets by streaking through the air at almost 3 times the speed of sound. Mach 2.8, translating to over 2,500 kilometers per hour, means that from launch to impact, a target inside its 23-kilometer envelope has barely half a minute to react. For a fighter at patrol altitude, that window collapses even faster. From the instant the fuel ignites, the pilot has seconds to decide whether to climb, dive, or throw every countermeasure into the sky. On this day, the F-16's pilot had one crucial advantage. The aircraft carried a cutting-edge radar, the APG-83. While older generations struggled against terrain and low-flying launches, this system caught the incoming signal at roughly 42 kilometers. That's not much breathing room, but it meant the crew didn't wait until the missile closed half the distance before detecting it. The warning tone spiked quickly, shrill in the cockpit, and the pilot banked sharply, pushing through crushing G-forces that could blur vision in an instant. The maneuver chosen was dramatic, but necessary. A nose-down dive from a lofty 30,000 feet, straight toward denser air below, pulling the jet to 15,000 feet in seconds. The body takes a punishing toll from such moves. Every muscle strains to keep blood from draining from the brain, while the horizon whips violently in the cockpit glass. But straight flight meant death, so maneuver was the only survival card. At the same time, the jet's defensive suite sprang into action like a crowded chessboard of noise and distraction. Hot flares shot outward, burning to confuse the missile's seekers. Chaff canisters exploded into the airstream, scattering foil clouds that mimic radar signatures. A belly-mounted pod, the ALQ-184 jammer, flooded frequencies with deliberate interference, scrambling the missile's ability to lock. These measures sometimes work alone, sometimes fail outright, but used together, they create a wall of misdirection that evens the odds. Yet even after all of that, the missile didn't fall away immediately. Its seeker head kept adjusting, clawing toward the jet's heat signature, and for several long seconds, the situation froze into what fighter pilots dread. A stalemate where man and machine trade seconds hoping the other breaks first. The margin for error was measured in split seconds, and the difference between survival and fireball depended on whether gravity and deception could outpace solid rocket fuel. This time, the missile sliced past, breaking lock and tumbling in search of a phantom target. The F-16 lived to climb back toward safe altitude, but survival above the Red Sea wasn't the conclusion of this story. It was the trigger, because for Washington, it wasn't only about one pilot going home alive. It was about proving that every attack carried a cost, one measured not only in evasive dives, but in a response that could engulf an entire coastline. And that answer was already on its way. But what happens when a missile doesn't just endanger a single fighter? It threatens to unravel stability across the region. That's where the architecture of the American response takes over. Most viewers would expect the American answer to a near miss, like that to be something simple. Maybe a missile strike on the launcher, and the story ends there. But that is not how the US plans its responses. This was not about lobbing a weapon back across the Red Sea. It was built like a blueprint, each piece designed to overwhelm at every level, so that an enemy force could not even imagine trying the same thing again. The difference between a counterattack and an architecture is that one seeks revenge. The other seeks to erase the system that made the attack possible in the first place. The orders came down, encrypted to the USS Spruance, a guided missile destroyer patrolling not far from the same corridor the F-16 had almost been lost in. The message was clear: do not just return fire, erase the threat. That meant radar sites, logistics centers, and the electronic eyes and ears that gave the Houthis any chance to fire again within days. For US commanders, punishing one crew on a launcher was meaningless if the broader network stayed intact. So the mission package was drawn up and loaded. Spruance did not sail as a lone actor. It was the keystone for a multi-domain strike. Now here's the part that surprised many observers. Why not simply launch Tomahawk cruise missiles, the well-known option, the weapon that has been the American choice for decades of retaliation? Tomahawks are effective, but also predictable. They take time to arrive, follow planned routes, and risk being tracked by surface search radars. Instead, the Navy loaded out SM-6 missiles, long used as part of air defense shields. These are faster, more flexible, able to engage targets at supersonic speeds. In this operation, they were retooled for a ground strike role. By using them, commanders showed that nothing about this retaliation would be conventional or slow. This was speed creating shock. Overhead, the architecture widened. An E-2D Hawkeye aircraft lifted, orbiting high above, its giant rotating radar dish pulling in the geometry of the battle space. Every radar sweep tracked launches, signals, and shifts around the Yemeni coast, feeding Spruance and guiding the strike aircraft waiting off deck. The second layer came in the form of EA-18G Growlers. These specialized jets carried pods designed to smother enemy radar waves. If the Houthis tried to bring other batteries online, those signals would be buried under electronic noise before they could ever pierce the sky. Swinging in behind were FA-18S, some carrying JDAM smart bombs, others loaded with HARM missiles that lock onto enemy emitters and destroy them at their source. Together they formed a rolling wave designed to first blind, then silence, then demolish. The operation even extended beyond manned aircraft. A Triton ISR drone, orbiting at high altitude, streamed live data to the Joint Command Node. Every truck that moved, every antenna that spiked even briefly, was tagged in real time. This was not scattered retaliation. It looked like an orchestra playing to a single conductor, every note timed, each instrument hitting its part. Within minutes of launch orders, the full package was in motion, a layered response, forming across sea and sky. One missile fired at a US F-16 forced more than evasive maneuvers. It triggered an entire system built to respond in layers. The jet survived because of quick reaction and technology. But the wider retaliation showed something else. American forces do not answer with a shot for a shot. They carry out an operation meant to remove the capability altogether. The message was clear: attack a US aircraft, and you do not face one missile in return. You face the joint force. If Houthis were only the trigger, the real audience was their sponsors. So the question remains: who risks it next?